So, Barry, let me introduce you, and then we are going to move to questions. I have a quite lengthy list of questions, and I've prepared mine as well, and we have some questions from audience as well. So guys, I have a pleasure to introduce Barry Schwartz, and Barry is the SEO of Rusty Brick, a New York-based service firm specializing in customized online technology that helps companies decrease costs and increase sales. Rusty Brick sells custom web software, including advanced e-commerce, custom content management system, social networking sites, CRM applications, custom web-based business software, even iPhone applications, and much more. Also, Barry, the founder of a very, very well-known industry blog, Search Engine Roundtable. I love this blog, and that's where I learn all our industry news and trends. So, and that industry blog has covered search for over 70 years. Barry, a quick question to you. How Google did look like 17 years ago compared to what we see right now?
I think there's some screenshots that you could find on, Google image search.
I tried actually to Google something to show guys, but it's kind of very hard actually.
It was very textual based. It wasn't so rich like you would see today. There were no ads early days and before 2000, I think. But it was basically just 10 blue links, title tag, snippet, and then, URL. Now we have all this stuff going on. It's much more complex, a lot of ads. The organic results are definitely not at the top of the search results anymore. So it was definitely a lot more fun for SEOs to be doing SEO in certain fields because #1 listing would literally get you tremendous amounts of traffic, whereas now the #1 listing might not get you as much traffic.
Yeah. So, and talking about Google many years ago, about its ranking factors, what was the main ranking factors back those days?
So before Google used to do these like Panda, Penguin core updates, there was basically what was called these Google dances. Not the dance that they had at the Search Engine Strategies conferences where they used to invite us to their headquarters to have some little party, but more of where the Google PageRank scores and the rankings would change, and SEOs would sit there and watch the changes happening to their PageRank scores. Obviously the PageRank toolbar shows 0 through 10. The score is not that technically behind the scenes. It's much more complex than 0 through 10. But Google used to publish those PageRank scores, and also the rankings would change. So during this time, during the dance time, it would basically be where Google had numerous servers around the world, and they used to have their own IP addresses. So SEOs would have a list of those IP addresses and then track to see how their PageRank scores were changing and how their rankings were changing. That's why it was called a dance, because you would see on some Google servers, you would have a PageRank score of 4, and some you would have a PageRank score of 5 and 6 and so forth. And that means the Google dance has started. And what you would get what you would see when that happened was your rankings would be your rankings for the next 30 days or so. That Google dance happened for 30 days. So
it was quite predictable.
It wasn't unpredictable, but you knew what would be the next 30 days.
Okay, at least.
What happened, yeah, right. So it was pretty crazy. It was fun times, just like sit there and watch these things. There was tools that actually track the Google dances and so forth. So it was a fun time. And it was like, all right, if you had a PageRank 7 or 8, you were golden. You could rank for whatever you wanted to. And that was all based off of links. So links were extremely important back then. PageRank and links were hugely important, and content was not as important as it was today, as it is today, but it was definitely more about links. Google, everything was focused around links back then.
Okay, so let me take a look at our list of questions. Oh, I have a question about the last core Google update that was rolled out roughly 6 months ago. And what kind of changes in ranking pattern this update brought to Google's search result?
So these core updates are interesting. It's not like you could say this core update was impacting people who did bad links, or impacting people who had low quality content, or people who had ads all over the place. These core updates kind of like incorporate everything, like the past Panda and Penguin updates, the quality content, ads. It has everything in it. So it's hard to say that it's like, oh, if this past core update impacted this type of website in this industry, it doesn't work that way anymore. Which is kind of sad, because it used to be easy to like say, all right, a Penguin update is rolling out. If you have bad links, that's the problem. The Panda update was rolling out. If you have bad quality content, that was low quality content, then you could work on your content. So it doesn't work that way anymore. And now when you kind of get hit by these core updates, you really need to take a holistic view of your website. What can you do to improve the whole site overall, and then make those improvements over time?
Yeah, I think like nowadays it's more about like, Google is more on a user side rather than on a webmaster side. And what you need to do, you need also to take care about bounce rates and the overall performance of your website, right?
Exactly. I don't know if Google specifically, there's all these rumors that Google does look at page experience factors like.
You don't believe in this? I just want to hear your opinion. Do you think Google really takes into consideration users' behavior on a particular website to decide whether it's going to rank higher or lower?
Right. So Google has said, no, they don't look at Google Analytics or Chrome data specifically for pogo staking, click-through rates, time spent on a page, all that type of stuff. They don't look at that data because they said it's easy to manipulate that, and it's also very noisy. So you could, back in the day, a search engine called Direct Hit would actually go ahead and look at click-through rates from the search results to the actual page and use that as a ranking factor. That was easily, you just hired a bunch of people.
Yeah, you can easily manipulate this for sure.
So I don't think they necessarily use those factors directly. They might use factors that kind of correlate to that, like content quality and how the page is structured, stuff that they can actually analyze with a machine, as opposed to bringing in metrics from Google Analytics, which they're really adamant about saying we don't use that information. So I trust them when they say that, but I think there's a lot of correlation between, a website has a good user experience. You want to recommend that website, you want to link to that website, you want to buy in that website. That tends to happen. Google tends to rank sites that aren't really good these days, so it kind of correlates.
Yeah, for sure. You need to be like a trustworthy brand. And so that's just a part of search engine optimization nowadays. Okay, so but talking about the last core Google update, so what kind of sites were negatively affected by this update?
So generally with core updates, sites that generally have like a poor user experience. People go to the website, they're not satisfied. The content's very, very thin. There's a lot of ads all over the place. Those general like negative user experience types of websites get impacted by that. And then Google's stricter when it comes to like the health, like the YMYL, your money, your life category. So health, finance, stuff that actually makes an impact on a person's, very important things like their money and their health.
Yeah, for sure.
So Google kind of like escalates those factors to say a site that is in that realm needs to really have the most authoritative, well, I'll do expertise, authoritative, and trustworthiness content. So the whole EAT thing, which I guess somebody must be covering it in this conference. So those are the types of things that kind of people look at when it comes to these core algorithm updates. Is your site, under the EAT realm? Does it actually provide the most expertise, authoritative, and trustworthiness content? And of course, those scales on where it is important, like if you're covering SEO, it's probably not as important as if you're covering, COVID-related symptoms and vaccines and all those types of things around the health and so forth.
But in that case, if we are talking about the last core Google update, it seems like that Google takes into consideration some kind of users' behavior, because I believe they looked at some metrics in order to just filter out those websites that have some, I don't know, bad user interaction in terms of might be also taken into consideration Most probably, maybe customer reviews as well.
I don't know. I don't know if they're necessarily taking into account customer reviews. I remember several years ago, Google, some webmaster site owner would basically request to get negative reviews from their customers, like treat their customers really, really poorly. This is actually written up in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. And because of that, it would get them more attention. And the way Google's algorithm worked, that attention actually helped them rank higher. So I don't know if Google's able, Google has said they don't really look at reviews in terms of organic rankings. So core updates wouldn't be like, oh, they have, you know, X number of negative reviews in Google Local or whatever it might be. I don't think Google necessarily uses that. I do think they look at the site design, the layout, the navigation, the architecture, how easy it is to navigate around the website, the content, how the content's structured. I think they look at that information, but I don't think they necessarily look at what like the sentiment around a specific page is about or a site. I don't think they necessarily look at that.
So I have a question related to poor UX and general design, because the internet nowadays is loaded with the websites that were launched a decade ago, and they have outdated design and UX. Actually, you don't need to go far away. Just take a look, for instance, at one of our industry conferences, BabCon. They have a pretty outdated design, just being honest. Great conference, but just what I see from their website. But do you think such websites, why some of them still, I would say, ranking quite high in Google, and so Google doesn't really touch them? That's just because of their previous history? I mean, like, that's because they was obviously launched a long time ago, and so they've already built a solid brand around them, or that's something else here?
Right. I mean, so there's lots of different factors that Google uses. It's like they always say we have over 200 ranking signals.
Yeah,
now,
right.
They always say it's hard to do negative SEO on a site that's been around for a long time with a lot of good quality links, a lot of good quality signals. So if a site is not doing so well with their web design, they have an old 20-year-old design, but yet all the historical information, they have really great links, they have really good content, users recommend their sites through links and so forth. If all those things are really, really good, then the stuff that's not so good, the user experience, the design, that might, ding them a little bit, but still they're going to still have all these other things that push them up in the algorithm that will, say, hey, you know what, this site's still going to rank well. Like Google said, a site that's slow is going to, not rank as well as a site that's not slow, but still relevance is the most important thing. So it's not going to, if you're the most relevant for a piece of content, for a query, if your content's the most relevant for a specific type of query, even if your site's super slow, Google's still going to rank it. It's just, it has no other option because it needs to rank the most relevant site. So Google has to take all these two factors into account and say, all right, even though the design is not so nice, maybe the user experience is not the best, it's still the most relevant for the actual query based off of links, content, and all this other stuff and history, for sure. And that happens all the time.
Yeah, I think it's also like, it's more important for newly launched websites, and also it depends on a competitive landscape. So for instance, if you just want to enter a very, very competitive niche where you see that each and every website looks good, has a decent UX and tons of authority, you just can't outrank them without having some basic stuff. So I think it's more about like, I believe your past history of your website is really affecting your current rankings. So, and if you recently just, launched your business, you need to just, first of all, cover some basic stuff and then just, build something more complex.
Right. And it's like any business. You start a new business, it's not like you're going to go ahead and automatically just start getting business. You have to build your reputation. Now, if you already have businesses and you launch a new business, a lot of the reputation from your previous businesses could be used. Like Marissa Mayer, the former, head at Google, who went to Yahoo, just announced today she's launching a new product. She got tremendous amount of press just because of her history and the amount of links that are going to be pointing to that site on day one, the amount of press, the amount of exposure she's getting because she has a pretty long history and reputation in this space. So you can launch new stuff and use your, existing reputation, existing history from your current, just like in the real world PR, you could use all that to benefit your new websites. But at the same time, old websites that have that long history of ranking, they have so many things going for them. So launching a new site is hard, but if you could use your existing history that you have maybe with other contexts, that can actually help you.
Yeah, you mean like, if you have some well-established businesses, you can try to somehow connect with your, newly started companies. And so just, kind of streamline this process.
Right, exactly. So I don't know, Google launches something new, they can create a new page in a matter of minutes, and it gets tremendous attention. So it's all about PR, really, not PageRank, but really about getting the message out there so people want to actually cover it, link to it. You want to be on TechCrunch, you want to be on whatever news site that's most important for your industries. Yeah,
that's very true. I think like nowadays, kind of part of that was previously not really related to SEO, like digital PR is kind of integrated into SEO, and that's how the SEO landscape is changing. And quite recently, actually, Aleda has a very interesting conversation on Twitter where she was asking what kind of activity that you feel that not really SEO is in reality right now is a part of SEO. And so people were sharing a lot of different stories when they feel that it's like, for instance, digital PR or whatever it is, it's kind of becoming a part of SEO.
Yeah, I mean, everything, it's funny, everything is SEO these days, from, not just content writing.
Even social media is kind of connected to SEO because it helps you just, it's kind of a social proof, which is very important to Google as well.
Right. And that's why even back in the old days when social media just launched, it was very, very popular for SEOs to talk about that. We even had sessions at XMX, our conference, talking about social media, because even though those social media links are no followed, and Google and search engines don't really use that for any link weight, but the people that see it, it just generates more buzz, more PR, and then somebody might link to you, somebody might with a real follow link, and so forth. So all that stuff, all that stuff helps. Good design, good user experience. It's all one thing. Every SEO these days is not just an SEO. They're not just a digital marketer. They are a user experience expert. They are an e-commerce conversion expert. They are an expert in building out proper websites that do well. Yeah,
that's very true. That's like, when you're just thinking about SEO, think, okay, it's just about ranking websites. But then you have, okay, but what about conversions? But what about UX? But what about this and that? And you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many actually areas that you need to cover in order to rank well. So actually I have a question about small and medium businesses. Do you feel that Google organic search is still an option for small and medium-sized companies? Or they might start to just, to search for some other source of traffic like social media, just because some niches are insanely competitive, like digital marketing, for instance.
Right, 100%. So if you're getting into a really competitive niche, then it's really going to be hard for a small business to compete. What you need to do is really find that sub niche. So it used to be like, oh, you could be great at SEO, so that's your sub niche in digital marketing. Now it's in, your local SEO. Then even local SEO, it's kind of like, all right, maybe you are a local SEO that specializes for, dentists. So you kind of need to like find your niche, become really, really, really good at that very subtopic, and then maybe expand out from there. So always the biggest recommendation for anybody getting into anything new these days, really excel at what you're really, really good at. Make yourself known as the expert in that subtopic, and then really expand from there. When I got into SEO like 20 years ago, SEO was the niche. I mean, but now if somebody's getting into it, they kind of have to like focus on a very specific subtopic of SEO to become that expert and to do really, really well in that space.
Yes, that's very true. But even like, what's really interesting that you can also, I think it's possible to create a demand and to create something new based on what we have. I mean, like you can just, like Brian Dean, which is a great example. He created a skyscraper technique and a new term actually that people currently searching in Google. So you can even create like a new niche. And that's where you need for sure digital PR and some publicity, but it's definitely doable.
100%. Like there are people in the spaces that will create their own subtopic. Like, I don't know, before technical SEO was the thing, or before any of these like YouTube
about
SEO.
crawl budgets, for instance, that was a new one thing actually. No one was just, I remember like 5 years ago, it was like, no one was talking about crawl budget. No one cares about it.
Right. And truth is probably most sites don't need to care about it, but that's that person's niche. So crawl budget is great to get enterprise level.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a fit for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. There's definitely room for you to find and make your own topic. You can even brand your own topic once you become an expert in it and give it your own name. I know somebody is all into, Fraggles, she calls it. And now that passage indexing is out, she's saying, well, I kind of anticipated this, and she did it in some level, although Google's not really sub-indexing content. It's more just surfacing that content differently. But it's still, the people could come up with their own little niche topics. I know Glenn Gabe was all about phantom updates and so forth. So you can definitely come up with your own niche and kind of brand that under your own name. And that could be your expert topic. And then from there, keep going. That's what I recommend for anybody new coming into this, is really find something you're really, really passionate about it and kind of take that and kind of brand it around your name.
Yes. That really works, because I used to just, to search my niche across various digital marketing verticals. And we literally tried each and every niche. And so at some point, we noted that we are capable of building links like no one does in our niche. And so our unique approach actually just, we built a business around it. So basically you need to find some unique kind of selling point, I would say here, what you can do better than the rest of others. And then it's way easier to promote your brand and to rank it well.
Right, but make sure you do it in the right way, because I've seen so many people like do something in like SEOs that know this stuff is like, this is a joke. Like when Rank Break came out, or when passage indexing came out, or BERT came out, it was like, all right, people are showing ads for BERT links, Rank Break links. It makes absolutely no sense, but they're trying to create their own niche based on knowing some things about some things and some things about other things, but they don't fully understand it. So make sure you fully understand what your niche is. Read the technical papers on it, read the patents on it, become really, really engrossed in it, and then you can really shine from everybody else.
Yes. Yeah, sure. So I guess I'd love to wrap up everything quickly, and I have a question about the future of Google SERPs. So do you think Google will use the data like customer reviews, traffic metrics, and so on that we've just discussed previously? So Google will use this data to rate websites somehow in SERPs, and to show these rates in the site snippets inside search engine results.
Does Google use ratings and reviews for
Yeah. So we'll be integrating all the data that currently is hidden from users, and we'll be like, kind of giving you an idea about the quality of websites, not only based on just relevancy, but also like saying, okay, this one, like, currently it has like customer reviews actually for some particular search engine results, but not necessarily for each and every search query.
So I'm not. So there's a bunch of ways to answer that. I think in general the answer is no. So there's three things. One is obviously the Google local reviews. There's including the reviews around the web, around this company. There's the schema reviews that you have on your own page, structured data.
Yeah.
And then there's just like, I guess maybe search quality rater reviews that might apply. And in all those cases, the answer, from what I've heard from Google and what I've seen, no, Google does not use any of those directly for ranking purposes. They might show those, like the schema, the structured data, as rich results that improve your click-through rate in the search results, but not necessarily used for ranking purposes. Rich results and schema and structured data are not used for ranking, but for richening the search results.
Okay, and so the final question about search results, because I saw on your Twitter that Google tests subcategories in search results. So does it mean that sites ranking as the top 3 results will be getting fewer organic visitors if they decide to launch this kind of a new feature? About I was talking about, so they added kind of, you were showing a screenshot where you have a search results with kind of subcategories that you can click.
Right. So Google's been testing this, I think, for years. And they actually, for the past, it's actually increased now. So I just showed yesterday, like on the top.
One more time, right?
Yeah, and then on the left-hand side, they actually also testing it. It's basically a way of Google subcategorizing the search results by general search results, reviews, you name it, like products, whatever categories it might be. And I don't know if they're going to go live with this. It's kind of like a test. They kind of do it with if you do COVID-related searches as well. It's very popular. So I'm not sure how widely that's going to launch. I don't think it's necessarily a ranking thing. It's just, obviously there's going to be rankings within each category, and that's going to be hard for SEOs to handle. It's going to be hard for Search Console to kind of convey. So I don't think it's going to launch. I don't know for sure. They're testing it. But if they do that, then SEO is going to have to think, all right, now I need, for this query, these are the types of categories that Google shows. I kind of want a page for each one, right? So I want a page for reviews. I want a page for, whatever categories that Google might show. I want to have that information. So if Google does launch it, SEO should really adapt and think, hey, how do I get a page for each of these to show up in each category of those search results?
Yeah. That kind of makes the whole process much more complex if they decide to do it. So thank you very much, Barry. Thanks for joining us today. That was very, very lovely to chat with you today and knowing more about Google updates. So finally, I have a very solid understanding about what's going on in terms of Google ranking factors and what's next we should kind of see from Google. So thank you very much one more time for joining us. I had a great pleasure.
Thank you.